guys, in any software projects, there are mainly software development life cycles or module that you need to be aware of. So the two major ones is firstly the sequential development module. So what do we mean by sequential development module? This is basically where the software activities is done in sequence. So basically one activity is carried out before the other and so on. So it goes in that stage. So if you can see at the diagram in this slide, you can see that the first activity will be the design stage. So the design stage is where we actually gather the requirements and try and identify, what do we need to achieve in this project from a technical perspective, and what are those components that we need to build or modules that we need to build for this software, and what are the various design activities that we're going to carry out. Okay, and each activity, like the design activity, would have, once that has been done or completed, then there'll be a test carried out to ensure that that specific module works as it should and works and meets the requirement. So that type of test carried out is known as component test. So that's when the individual module will be tested to ensure that it works correctly. And then that will be followed by an activity called the build. So the build is actually where the software design actually takes place, the actual development takes place. So what do I mean by this? So we have the design stages, basically where all the requirements, analysis, and so on has been carried out, and obviously specific testing. So at this moment, there'll be a very small level of design specific to that module or code that is required, right? The build is actually the full integration of that module that completes the whole application or software. So for example, this is where we want to actually consider what are all the other modules that we would integrate with this program to complete the software development. Okay, and then that's the build activity. And then once that's been completed, there'll be a testing carried out known as the component integration test. So this is where that specific module or program would actually be tested to ensure that it integrates with existing programs, okay, for the system or software to work as per the requirements or as per the business objective for it. Okay, then once the build activity is completed, the final activity or sequential activity in this module is known as the test activities. So this way software testers would come in at this point, and then they'll carry out the system test, which is where they'll check that software incorporates and works as it should as a complete system. So they'll do the full end-to-end test, ensure that it works and meets the requirements, and then validate the different features or functions that were updated for that system, and ensure that they found as much bugs and defects as they carry on or as they carry out their test. And then the last final test is user acceptance test. So for the user acceptance test, testing will be carried out from a business kind of perspective to ensure that the system is ready before it's deployed to a live environment. So the one test that is common between all these three activities is known as a static test. So this is where the testers would be involved at each stage of these activities to ensure that testing is carried out early, to ensure that all the work products, including the software requirements or any design documentation or any other testing, to ensure that those bugs are detected or identified early in the activities for this development model, because it's cheaper when such bugs are identified early and rectified before the later stages of the development activity for this module. So I hope you understand how this module works. And as I said, this is one of the major sequential development module that you need to be aware of. The other main development life cycle is known as the iterative development module. So just as the name suggests, it's where the software build is done in chunks. Okay, it's be done in pieces. So as you can see from the first diagram, it's labeled iteration 1. So this is the first this is the first batch of the design or build of that software. So that's why it's known as the iteration 1. So what happens is there's usually a short time frame to complete such project or software build, and the reason is because they are they are building their software in stages. So they obviously start by identifying what are the major features that's required for this software, and then they'll start and build a project around that, and then that will become the first iteration for that software build. So as you can see from the diagram, the first one is labeled iteration 1, and the testing the activities is very similar to the sequential life cycle. As you can see, they will carry out the design, the build, and the test. The only difference is that this is done in chunks. Okay, they don't do it. They don't. It's different because you don't get a complete software at the end of each iteration. So you get just some parts of the software, and then once that is completed and checks out fine and is deployed, then they move on to the next update or the next increment of that software. So as you can see, iteration 2, similar activities again, design, build, and test. Okay, and then one common test that is carried out between each iteration is regression test. So what's a regression test? A regression test is a test carried out to ensure that the new software update or the new code and program has not affected existing ones or impacted on existing programs. Okay, so as you know, as each iteration of the software increases, there are chance and risks of existing programs to be affected by any new changes. So we carry out a lot of regression tests in between each update or increment or iterations. Okay, so these are the only major risks with this type of iterative development module. Okay, so these are the two major software development life cycle. I hope we've learned something here today. Please do like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.